Welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder. And today's episode is brought to you by Kobu. Say goodbye to dreading pumping and turn it into a little mom vacay with Kobu's organic 100% natural breast pumping spray. We will hear more from our sponsor later, but you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com and check out our sponsor page. See if you can give them any of their business. See if you can give them any of your business if you ever need anything, because they make this podcast possible. And while you're there, scroll down and enter your email address, and we will send you episodes straight to your inbox every week. And we are on Patreon, and we would love to see you there enjoying all of the extra content that we are creating with our ad-free episodes and mini podcasts and Revolution Parenting episodes and our Zoom hangouts and our weekly wellness checks. Everyone should have an opportunity to share what's going on with them. So you can check out the link at the top of the show notes under this episode, wherever you're listening from. And we're also hosting our ongoing giveaway of Dianne and I's favorite thing is our podcast stickers.
Yes.
Take a screenshot. Take a screenshot of your review. Send it to badassbreastfeedingpodcast@gmail.com along with your address, and we will send you a goodie bag of those stickers and thank you for nursing in public cards. And now Dianne has our review of the week.
And I love this. It says, I wish I had found this podcast before I got pregnant instead of around 3 months when I went back to work and started having supply daycare problems. This podcast gave me the confidence to stand my ground and know what is biologically normal for my baby. 16 months later, we are still nursing. Thank you so much for sharing all this wealth of knowledge. I love how she put having supply and in parentheses daycare issues.
Yeah. Because the issue is not you, it's the daycare.
Yes. And I'm so glad that we were able to help you with that. That makes me feel so good that we were able to help you when you thought you were having supply issues, but it was the daycare. And I think that's so common. And if this is the first you're hearing of anything like that, what often happens when you go back to work and you send your baby to a daycare is they start to tell you, you need more milk, you need more milk, you need more milk, when actually it's not more milk that you need. They don't know your baby's behaviors. So it is really important to consider that when somebody's telling you need more milk for daycare, because it really is possible that you don't need more milk for daycare. That is just your daycare is not responding to your baby's needs the way they need to. So if you have any concerns about that, definitely reach out and we'll help you. But we do have a lot of episodes on it because it is such a common thing. So I'm so glad we were able to help this person. And yes, listening while you're pregnant is super helpful.
Yes, that's hindsight is 2020, right?
Right. Yeah. So thank you for sending that in, and definitely send us reviews. We've got all these fun stickers. We want to send them out to you. Send us your reviews. It's so fun. I'm sticking them on all the things.
Every email that I get that's like, hey, this sticker place that you ordered from one time is having a sale. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to make more stickers. I just design stickers like on the couch.
So fun.
It was fun. You want to see them for sure. So send us your review. And we have a special treat today. We have Dr. V from Sound Birthing, and she's going to share a wealth of knowledge with us. And let's get to it. I'm so excited to introduce Dr. V to the podcast from Sound Birthing. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. V.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I love your podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. And you and I met like a couple of months ago now at Babies and Bumps in Detroit.
Yes. Yeah, we did. Our booths were sort of back to back.
Yeah. And you said to me, oh, hey, I have a degree in childbirth psychology. And I said, who, what, where?
Yeah.
What? That sounds like the coolest thing ever. And I'm ashamed that I don't know what that is or didn't know that was even a field of study.
Really kind of not a thing. So,
Oh.
In the most like technical sense, my PhD is in generalized psychology, but my whole focus is the psychology of childbirth. My dissertation and all of my research are on the psychology of childbirth.
Now, I was telling my mom is here. And just before we got connected today, my mom said, so who is this person that you're interviewing? What does a person have to do to be interviewed on your podcast? And I was like, well, I don't, just to kind of offer something unique. And I said, this person studies childbirth psychology. And she was like, what? Oh my God, that sounds interesting. I said, no. She said, so is it the psychology? She's like, I'm sorry, this is probably a dumb question, but is it the psychology of the mom or the baby? And I said, I don't know. I'll let you know after I'm done.
And it is the psychology of the person giving birth.
Okay.
The psychology of the baby is actually pretty well sort of covered in
that seems to be that's very studied. Yes.
Yeah. But we don't really, we know this across all sorts of women's health issues. Women's mental health. We just don't pay a ton of attention to it. Right? The big news was that we've just started testing menstrual products with actual menstrual blood.
Yes.
Yeah. And for many years.
How is there's not like I can tell you there is no shortage of menstrual blood to test with.
Right. Exactly.
We all know this.
For many, many, many years, we tested birth control on men because their hormones were more regular.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's just not, one of the things that I always say is that the goal of the obstetrician, the midwife too, but that's separate. The goal of an obstetrician is to keep the baby alive and to keep the birthing person alive. That is their job. And it is a super important job, and it's a very noble job. But that is all of their job. It is not their job to think about how your experience is going to affect your mental health 3, 6, 20 years later. It's not their job to think about how it is occurring in the moment and how they speak to you will impact your experience. And, when a lot of times when things are really intense and you're dealing in life or death situations, it's sort of that Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing. That's the priority, right? Keeping them alive is the priority. But it's so much bigger than that. And childbirth doesn't have to be as dramatic and scary as we think it does. But the attitude sort of plays into this idea that it is.
Yeah, well, because it's so medicalized, right? It's so medicalized, and it's an emergency,
right?
Like a childbirth has become a medical emergency.
Yes,
and so oh my God, most likely everyone's going to die, and we all have to be super stressed out and hopped up on adrenaline,
right?
And be shouting through this experience,
right.
And it's like it's. We don't see it. It's the normal bodily function, actually.
That has been around since people. Right. But it's also
even before people
sort of exacerbated by the media. Right. I always say I'm going to start some petition against Hollywood, because not only with the way people give birth in movies, but how often do we see someone's water breaks and then they're screaming in the taxi and the baby's being born in the taxi? That's not real. That is entertainment. No. And it's often entertainment that kind of pokes fun at women. But, that tends to be how entertainment is written. So, we have a lot of misconceptions about what it's going to be like. And then we sort of play into those beliefs.
Yes. But I feel like we are so ahead of ourselves right now.
Probably.
We didn't even introduce you. You're Dr. V, your business is Sound Birthing.
Yes.
And tell us about you. Tell us about your, what you do, all the things that you do. I know you do a million things.
Yeah. So I have a PhD in psychology, focusing on the psychology of childbirth. I'm also a sexual health educator, a yoga instructor, and a certified sound therapist. So if you're not familiar with sound therapy, it's those they're often called Tibetan singing bowls. Himalayan bowls is the more accurate term, crystal bowls, tuning forks, that kind of thing. And it's a huge passion of mine because it's been instrumental in helping me deal with anxiety. And the science behind it is really fascinating to me. It appeals to my sort of, sciencey nerd brain. Specifically for anybody that's interested in sound therapy who doesn't know. So you play these different instruments, and the bowls stimulate your brain to go from an alpha wave state, which is like, I got to make the grocery list, right? To a delta or theta wave state. So it's this deep relaxation state. And it also causes your brain to produce something called anandamide, which is the bliss chemical. Anybody out there who does yoga might hear Ananda and be like, oh, that's from happy baby pose, Ananda Balasana. And so there was this chemical in the brain that it binds to the endocannabinoid receptors in our brains. So endocannabinoid, that's where cannabis goes. So when someone consumes cannabis, it binds to these same receptors as anandamide. So this is the body's sort of very natural way of creating a deep, relaxing, sometimes even high-like feeling. So it's just a great thing. I like to incorporate it in my classes. I like to do, custom sound baths is what they're called. Tracks that people can listen to when they go into labor, when they're giving birth, because as we're going to talk about in this, to me, it's all about staying calm. That's going to be the best thing that you can do for you and your baby.
Yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah. And I think I didn't really answer your question. So what I do is I educate. I educate on how you can have your best birth. How you can have what is the best birth possible for you. And
so you do that. That's your business. That's like the main thing you do.
Yes.
And so how do you do that? Do you do that with like individual?
So we can do individual. I do groups as well. Community centers or obstetricians offices, yoga studios will hire me to come in. But I also have a course online, which I honestly think that's the best, because you can take the course online. You can do it at your own pace. If you are giving birth in a week, you can do the whole course right before you give birth, and then at least you have some sort of advantage over going in more sort of blind. And then if you want more, you can always reach out and we can work individually, but you'll have this sort of foundation where you can come in and say, this was really interesting to me in your class, or when I did this activity, I realized I have a lot of concerns around this. Can we go deeper into that? And then we can work one-on-one in that way.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
And very useful.
It took me I worked really hard to develop the course, and it's designed for the birthing person, but then there's also, you get a lot of activities. Actually, when we were at Babies and Bumps, my friend Asia was there helping me with the booth, and she said, stop telling people they have to do homework. And I was like, great. They're fun activities, but it's a lot of journaling prompts, a lot of helping you get organized. So when you finish the course, you have what's called your birth toolkit. And it's what you can take with you so that you are prepared, not only with a sort of like, this is what I want for my birth, but this is what I'm going to do if things don't go the way that I thought. This is how I'm going to keep calm. This is who's going to help me after I give birth. This is what I'm going to need. This is what I need from my support person or support people. And then there's a bunch of worksheets, not homework, fun activities for your support person or persons as well, because they're going through this too, and they have their own feelings and emotions. And like one of the activities that I really like is dealing with their fear. And how realistic is their fear? And how are they keeping their fear from impacting their birthing person's fear? And how are they going to cope so that they don't become part of the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fun. You also get 2 sound baths in the online class. You get a bunch of breathing exercise videos, a video on how to do spontaneous yoga, which I think is great, not only for your daily life, but also while you're giving birth. And yeah, it's a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
I love that.
Thank you.
So, and this is very important to you because you were telling me like you listened to the episode where we were talking about stress and and how it affects milk supply.
Yes.
But you were talking about how this can go, the idea of this goes so much deeper and so much.
Yeah. So
tell us.
One of those things that I feel like, you'll get, in the sort of traditional sense, you get pregnant, you go to the hospital, you give birth, you have this new person, you're holding it, and like someone who you don't know comes in and is like, this is how you feed the baby, bye. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
But your ability to have a really successful journey breastfeeding starts before you even go into labor. And not only because the research shows that the majority of people make decisions about how they're going to feed very, very early on in pregnancy. So, you want to be talking about these things early on, but your experience during birth will impact things like latch, like milk letdown, and ejection response. And so if we're waiting until after birth to have these conversations, it's already too late.
Yeah.
And so the main thing kind of there is that one of the biggest issues that people run into during birth is long durations. And you guys have talked about this a little bit on the podcast too, how there can be sort of this cascade of interventions, particularly as duration gets longer. And
yes,
the longer your birth is, the higher your cortisol levels are. And cortisol, which is this like the stress hormone, will directly impact the production of oxytocin. And we know how important oxytocin is for bonding with your baby, but also for regulating your milk response. So when you really increase these cortisol levels, you start to impact how your milk is being produced.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes me think of like a million different things. Because I remember my very first birth being very traumatic, being very stressed out, massive high cortisol levels. Going into my second birth, so stressed out because I was so scared of reliving that. And I remember working with a doula. I was basically like in therapy.
Yeah.
Working through this whole process of being so scared, and how can I calm myself, and how can I, not have to be so traumatized going into birth. And there's so many things that just go into that. You want to have this birth experience. We were talking about this too, about how birth and you want this birthing experience to be, you would think most people want to have this birthing experience that is peaceful and, all of this, but that's not even when I had my first birth, that's not what I was preparing for. I was preparing to be traumatized because that's what I just think birth is.
Right. And so 2 things about that. One, births they can be very, very traumatic. And then we just expect people to do it again. Like no conversation, no nothing. Just, hey, this super awful thing that you experienced, go experience it again while people like fawn over you talking about like cute little booties that have, I don't know, elephants on them.
Right. Yeah.
And it really is this whole thing where we don't really focus on the person giving birth. We focus on the baby. The baby.
Yeah.
I can't remember who said it, but you guys may have said it. I heard somebody say that, the baby is the candy inside and the pregnant person is the wrapper. And once we get to the candy,
that was not us. That's amazing.
Yeah. Once we get to the candy, you just discard the wrapper.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And it's like, it's so, so true. And it's devastating. And there's just so much that is put on the birthing person. And we just expect them to just sort of deal with it. Just be in pain. It's fine. Be traumatized. It's fine. go
At
without
least you
saying.
had a healthy baby.
Right. At least you had a healthy baby. And so it really gets into kind of this like core principle of the work that I do, which is the fear pain cycle. And so what I always say is I want to let you all in on a little secret. Childbirth doesn't have to be awful. It really, really doesn't. But we just assume that it does. And that's what I call the big lie, because we're all out here living our lives believing this lie. Childbirth is awful. You get through it. You just get through it.
Mm-hmm. And that plays so much into, too, how unprepared people are for everything that comes afterwards.
Right.
Like, because we're just focused so much on the birth because it's such this big, scary thing. We don't see it as like a part of the process.
Right.
Of like, this is just a part of a process of all these pieces that are connected together.
Yeah.
It's just this one big, scary thing.
Right.
There's a before and the middle and an after.
Right. And the after, it's like, unless you check every box and you have severe postpartum depression and we need to medicate you, then it just, you did the hard part. Just be happy you have a baby.
I know, seriously, right? I mean, oh my God.
Yeah.
And we see that as the easy part.
Right. Right. Because, I know someone who is a doula, and she was working with a very young woman who repeatedly was getting pregnant over and over and over and over again. And she couldn't afford to take care of the babies, and she didn't have any help, and she just kept getting pregnant. And everyone was talking to her about birth control and plans and all of this, that, and the other thing. And finally, my friend who's the doula said, "Why do you think you keep getting pregnant?" And she was like, "Oh, I know. Because when I'm pregnant, I'm special. And everybody pays attention to me. The second I have that baby, no one cares anymore."
It is so true.
Yeah. And not just like emotionally, right? Even think about like the social services that you get from society when you are pregnant. They go away.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. But so
that's very terrifying.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said it's terrifying. I mean, really, to like the mental health of everybody.
Yeah.
And we'll be right back with more from Dr. V. All right, ladies. Breast pumping just got better. That's right. Say goodbye to dreading that time to pump and turn it into a little vacation for yourself. Kobu's organic 100% natural breast pumping spray. Just one quick spray on each flange perfectly lubricates so your tender tatas can glide while you pump. No more tugging, friction, or chafing. Just pumping bliss. Developed by pumping moms in 2017 who were pumping for their own NICU babies, and knew pumping could be better. Use code BADASS for 15% off of your order at koboomom.com. That's COBOOMOM.com. And make sure to check out their other awesome products. That's code BADASS for 15% off koboomom.com. And now back to Dr. V from Sound Birthing. But yeah, tell us more about the fear pain cycle.
So we go about our lives, and whether you see it in TV or in a movie or you hear somebody's birth story, you are getting sort of inundated with these traumatic stories. And our brains evolutionarily are designed to hold more tightly to the scary things. The way that I was taught is that, if the rabbit remembers where the carrot is, the rabbit lives another day. Or the rabbit eats. But if the rabbit remembers where the snare is, the rabbit lives another day.
Yeah.
And so we are so hardwired to know what's the scary thing. So I mean, it's a psychological safety precaution, right? I mean, we are wired to focus on negativity, to think negatively. This is how we protect ourselves. Absolutely. And so it doesn't matter if someone says, I had the best birth. It was incredible. It wasn't even just pain-free. It was ecstatic and I loved it. Doesn't matter.
We're like hippie, weirdo, weirdo hippie.
We do that.
What, were you in the woods?
Yeah, we do. We so diminish the idea of someone having a positive birth experience.
Yeah.
I actually have another friend who had just this overwhelmingly powerfully positive birth experience. And it was so great. And even that led to a severe depression because no one understood her. No one wanted to talk to her about it. Everyone dismissed her experience. And it wasn't until about 12 years later, she read a book and they were talking about this ecstatic childbirth in the book. And she said her whole world changed because she kind of always thought something was wrong with her, even though it was positive. We're so, quick.
It's so outside the box.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's so funny because I just still remember, like, because I had a home birth with my second child. And whenever I say that, people go, oh, well, I could never do that. Yeah. I couldn't do that because my baby this and my baby that, and I had this. And I'm like, I totally get it, but I'm also like, I wasn't talking about you.
That is true.
I'm just sharing my experience instead of being like, oh my God, how was that? Well, like if somebody says something, usually the follow-up question is, oh, well, how was that? Or how'd it go? Or what, no matter what you say. But whenever I would say that, people would just be like, oh, well, I couldn't do that.
It's because there's so much.
And I'm like, I just don't, I was okay.
There's so much shaming. And then it leads into so much defensiveness. And that's one thing I really love about your podcast is you guys are very upfront that this is a breastfeeding podcast, but we also understand that sometimes people feed formula. Like that's a reality. Right. We live in the real world, but most people don't get that. If people want to look for resources on breastfeeding, it's, breast is best, no exception ever, under no circumstances can you do anything else, or you're a terrible mom and your kid is gonna, live under a bridge someday.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And we're a podcast that takes very seriously, like following the WHO code as far as like sponsors and like the way that we advertise and stuff like that. And I remember one time posting, we had an episode that was about bottle feeding, and I posted the thumbnail photo with it was a picture of a person feeding a bottle to their baby. And people were very critical of it. Certain kind of WHO code people were like, that's terrible. That's not a good photo. Photos affect people and you shouldn't, have this. And I'm like, but the majority of people giving birth have to feed a bottle to their baby because they have to go back to work at like 4 or 6 weeks and they have to pump the milk and they're going to have to feed the baby with the bottle. We're not allowed to show reality.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
I always say if we lived in a society where we had 100% free total coverage healthcare, and I'm talking like Germany style healthcare where you got free massage, free chiropractor, free acupuncture, all that stuff. And we had universal basic income, and we had all of the protections in place and we had all of the mental health support. Then in that scenario, I would say, yes, everyone, and we don't have breast cancer and no one has, had to have a radical mastectomy, or anything like that. In that culture, 100%, you have to breastfeed your child. But we don't live in that world.
No.
People are working 3 shifts in a row at Taco Bell to pay for their rent. People are working 36-hour shifts as night nurse or, as full-time nurses. It's just not the reality we live in.
It's true. And I'm sorry. I think we interrupted the fear pain cycle.
Oh, we did. You're just so fun to talk to.
Again, I know. We could talk all day about all of this.
So what happens is you hear these terror stories. And again, you can watch them on a movie, on TV. You hear them from other people. You read about them in books. And then what that does is it creates a stress response in your body, and your body starts to produce more cortisol, because when you know something scary is about to happen to you, you get scared. Makes sense.
Yeah.
We also know that high levels of cortisol make pain feel more painful. So the same amount of pain, the pain score is rated higher. So now you're feeling all of this pain, which is really scary because pain is scary. So then
And it's reinforcing everything that you thought was going to happen.
Right. So now you're like, everyone was right. This is going to be the worst thing that ever happens to me. So your cortisol levels increase. So your pain increases. So your cortisol increases. And it just keeps going. No, that doesn't have to be your story. That doesn't have to be your experience. And even if it was your experience in the past, that is not this birth. That is not this baby. That doesn't have to be your story. You can stop the cycle.
How? It's so hard. I mean, I remember doing, like I said, when I had a doula, I was basically in therapy. I was like, it was like we were doing lots of drawing, we were doing lots of talking, we were doing all the things that, you know, that I even as a therapist myself have done. And I'm like, this is insane that the level of stuff I have to work through.
It's true. And it is work. I mean, we think about
work.
Like, the physical, like your body being physically prepared to give birth, but mentally you need to be prepared to give birth as well. And, you know, so often it's like, well, will I be a good mom? Can I be a good parent? What will happen with my life? And that's the mental thing. But again, that's the after. We have to talk about the before and the during. And so education, I mean, just knowing it doesn't have to be your story can go a long way. We always, you know, it's like sometimes people think, oh, the power of positive thinking is like, you know, wooey, but it's true because you change your brain chemistry.
Yeah. I was just having a conversation with my 12-year-old about this because, you know, as somebody who, you know, did a lot of work with like cognitive behavioral therapy, he'll say things. He's very, you know, he's very prepubescent. He's very negative. And he was saying, you know, all of these, and he was like, my life is terrible and my little brother's so annoying and I can't do anything, you know. And I was like, I said, you know, the more that you have these thoughts, the more that you are saying these things to yourself, the more upset you're getting. And the more, you know, and like, let's like, maybe we could like objectively look at this, you know. And he said, well, I don't have control over the things I think. And I said, that right there is absolutely not true.
Right.
You do have control over the things that you say to yourself. And it's hard. I'm not going to, you know, lie and say like, oh, it's really easy to just think positive. But just changing the thinking patterns, like you said, changes the brain chemistry.
Right. You know, in the immortal words of Taylor Swift, they said, baby, you got to fake it till you make it. And I did.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, education really is a big piece. Knowing you can change, but also, you know, in my class, we talk a lot about complementary alternative medicine. So what are the things that you can do to decrease stress, to stay calm? You know, we talk a lot about distraction technique. I'm sure you're familiar with that coming from a cognitive behavioral therapy background, but we also go really deep into medical interventions. No judgment. Because judgment doesn't help. That only adds to the stress, right? But you need to know. You need to know what could happen. If you have a C-section, they will very likely strap down your arms, put something on your face, and cover your head. If you don't know that that's coming, that is terrifying. And
that is absolutely horrifying. That's horrifying.
And we do this thing. There's a wonderful TED Talk called Lies We Tell Pregnant People. And she talks so much about how we infantilize pregnant women and we take away their autonomy and we don't tell them the whole truth because we think like they can't handle it. Right. In the same way that we tell like, you know, that if you're breastfeeding, you can't have a beer. Right. Because we think that women can't make responsible decisions.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so we hide so much about the birth process and what can happen because we don't want to scare anybody. We don't want to freak anybody out. But knowledge is power. And it also gives you the
not doing anybody any favors to hide the information.
Right. And then you can make informed decisions. And to me, having the information, making informed decisions, and being prepared for a backup plan, like that is so huge in maintaining a sense of calm.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And there's so much goes into that too, because I remember just having to think about absolutely everything. And you probably talk about this too, like hiring the right birthing team and having the right, the people that you trust.
Right.
And being able to just to let yourself go into that place.
Right. And
because it is scary. You've never done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like the media, everything makes it worse.
Right.
But we never see it either, right? I mean, like in other cultures, I think in throughout history, when somebody was giving birth, there was family around.
Right.
There were kids peeking around around the corner or whatever. And there were just, you would see these things and breastfeeding and all of this. And we've just taken it and put it into a little box where nobody can see it. Right. And it's very big and scary. And it's in a hospital too, because you might die.
Right. Right. And one thing that is really hard to talk about, but again, that we do have to talk about is maternal mortality rates in the United States are abhorrent. They are. So
they're like the high. I feel like I just saw a headline list that it's the absolute highest of all Western countries.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
it is.
I feel like it's been that way for a while too, because I think that statistic has been around for a long time.
It has, and they just did last year sort of like a maternity welfare support card for all the different states. The highest any state got was California, and they got a B, but the United States average was a D.
Oh.
And so I want people to know that, like, it is okay to be afraid. It is. Your fear is valid, but it also doesn't have to consume you, and it doesn't have to be the driver.
Right, because once you have all the information, then you can create a safe place where you feel safe, where you feel like you're well taken care of, where you can have this empowering birth and this birth that you want to have.
Totally.
Without having to, be afraid of things that are outside of your control.
Right.
Again.
Right.
Yeah. That's wild.
Birth is wild.
Right. Birth is wild. It's so funny that it's just so funny to me. All of that, everything that we do to women is funny to me. And especially like infantilizing, like, a person who's about to give birth.
Yes.
Like, there is no more powerful person in the world who is just like grown a life and is going to give birth to a life. And then it's just like, oh, you're just such a little stupid little thing.
Right. Hey,
you can't do anything, we have to do all these things for you. And you're, it's just.
We could do a whole other podcast just on my beliefs around why that happens.
Yes. Oh, well, we should do that. We should definitely do that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's just, anyway, we all know.
Yeah.
I know I'm preaching to the choir right now.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. But let's move into, because you recently listened to our sex stories episode.
Yes, so good.
And you had some fun things to talk about with that. As a sex...
Yeah, so as a sexual health educator, I loved that episode, and it's so great. So to the people who heard that and were intrigued by things, so one, just know that lactation is a really, really big sexual thing when you get sort of outside of these standard sort of vanilla sexual practices. And it's funny to me personally because, this is my background and I'm really excited about, breastfeeding and human milk and lactation and all of these things. But I first learned about induced lactation when I was at a lecture that was given by a person who, at the beginning of the lecture, she gave her sort of global positioning statement. And she was like, I have an invisible disability. I'm trans. I am Jewish. And was listing all these things. And one of them was, I am childless. And then she gets further into the conversation and she's talking about lactating. And I was like, what now? And so I ended up reaching out because I was really fascinated by this idea. And she and I had some long conversations. And she said, yes, I've always thought of lactation as being very erotic. I'm with a partner who finds it very erotic. And we wanted to incorporate that into our sexual routine. And so she went about inducing lactation, which is a thing that you can do, which I'm now totally obsessed with because, we are not living in the 1950s of this sort of very stereotypical heteronormative family. We have families now that have multiple parents. We have families with multiple parents with breasts. We have all different configurations. And, breastfeeding is a lot of work. If you've got more than one person in that family unit who wants to take up the mantle, let's do it. How do we make that happen?
Yeah. I mean, having 4 boobs as opposed to 2, my God, what a dream.
Right.
If the other person is same. But that's so true because people who are adoptive families and, these people are like, oh, can I lactate or can I induce lactation or is it possible? And it's here's a story that's it is actually. It's very possible to induce lactation.
Yes. And, also know that if you find it arousing, if you think it's cool, if you want to keep lactating long past your child's needs for it just because you enjoy it, that's totally normal. It's very normal. It's common. Do whatever floats your boat.
Exactly. That's the thing is that it's your body. You can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
And we of course we know that we sexualize the female body. We criticize extended breastfeeding because we say it's sexual and we're trying to make people, feel shame and not do these things. But we all know that this is not a sexual relationship with your child, which is what everybody is trying to kind of pin it on. We know that's not, it's not, you can enjoy your sexual relations with your partner as you see fit.
Right. I loved when you guys were talking about how, you kiss your partner different than you kiss your baby. That doesn't make kissing your baby sexual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all so completely different.
Right.
And it's not as black and white as everybody kind of wants it to be.
Right.
And you can do, and I'm just so glad that people shared those stories with us to help other people be like, okay, that's okay. I can do whatever I want with my partner.
Yeah. I love that. It's just so empowering and normalizing and just great. The other thing, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, go ahead.
The other thing from your stories podcast that this is one of my little PSAs that, when I was getting trained as a sexual health educator, I was surprised to learn this. And so I love to tell other people so that they know, which is that even if you are a person who lubricates a lot during sexual stimulation, it's really important to use lube all the time for any penetration. Find one that you really like. There's lots of different kinds out there. There are ones that are safe for fertility. Definitely test for allergies if you're using anything with weird scents or anything like that in it.
Yeah.
But what can happen is you can get these sort of micro tears that you don't even realize are happening. You're not feeling them, but they can cause infections or introduce bacteria. So if you are already working lube into your sexual routine, it can sort of preempt any dryness that might happen due to childbirth or lactation or medications or anything else that comes up age in your life that leads to dryness. So
you suggest it just all the time across the board?
Yes.
100%. Postpartum and beyond?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Pregnancy, never been pregnant, never going to be pregnant, postpartum, all the time, always.
Whatever. If something's going in, lube it up.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. And if you are in like a really, really sex positive family and you have, teenage daughters, talk to them about it early, because it will make their sexual transitions, their transition into a sexual being a lot easier.
That's good to know too. Yeah. Because we can't talk to our kids enough about these things.
So true.
Even though it's some people are so uncomfortable with it, but it's okay.
Yeah.
You can have the conversation. It's all about taking care of their body.
Right.
It's just a normal hygiene, like, self-care conversation.
Yeah. That's such a great way to frame it.
Yeah. Like, these are things that you're going to have to know to take care of your body. You teach your kids to brush your teeth, and eventually you're going to teach them, you're going to have those talks with them about, hopefully you're going to have the conversation. Nobody had a conversation with me, but
did you get a book?
I got nothing.
Oh, okay.
I got zero, nothing.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that. If you want to have a sex talk sometime, we could do that on a different call.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I got it now eventually. Okay. But not as like I was, not as a teenager as I started to become sexually active. No, my parents weren't like, okay, let's talk about how to be safe. No, not at all.
No. And it's dangerous, honestly, because
it is. It really is.
When you don't know what to expect and what's okay and what's not okay, you're more likely to end up in a situation that is unsafe.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we do that in this country because, of course, we have so many like religious right people who are scared of this conversation. And we think that if we don't talk about it, and again, if we don't give people the information, then we can, minimize things like teenage pregnancy and things like this. But I'll tell you, I was a teenager and a young adult in Amsterdam.
Oh, awesome.
And there was, so I didn't get a sex talk from my family, but I was surrounded by sex positive, everything. And there was teen pregnancy in Holland is very, very low.
Right.
And condoms are abundant. And in my college class, that was mandatory. A person came in and like they had the whole conversation about all the stuff. They took a suction penis, stuck it on the table, and we all had to go up and put a condom on it.
Nice. Much better than a banana.
Yeah. It was actually just like like a dildo. I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we got to have those conversations.
Yes.
But we also want to get to the MTHFR, which I wrote it down, and I'm just saying it looks to me like if it was a vanity plate.
Yep. You can get some fun stickers like on Etsy if you Google it, which is nice. They usually come up in like the infertility sticker section of Etsy because it can be correlated with infertility. But so before I get ahead of myself, what is MTHFR? It is a gene mutation. And what it means is when a person who doesn't have the mutation takes something with folic acid or folate in it, like a prenatal vitamin or even like a Pop-Tart, those have folic acid in them too.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So we should just eat lots of Pop-Tarts.
That's one way of looking at it. So the thing is that folate is really important, right? I'm sure you remember it from your prenatal vitamin tox, folic acid.
Yeah.
Many years ago, lots of kids were being born with spina bifida. And so the March of Dimes got together and they said, what we need to do is make sure that especially people who likely can't afford prenatal vitamins are getting folic acid. So they put it in basically every food you can purchase with WIC. So it's in pasta and cereal and flour and all of, crackers, all of those kinds of things, which is great for most people. But if you have the gene mutation, MTHFR, your body can't turn that folic acid into what's called methylated folate. And methylated folate is what your body needs not only to be strong, but to also grow a strong baby. And so that's why, you know, it comes up in infertility conversations, because if people are repeatedly having trouble staying pregnant or getting pregnant in the first place, they will test for this to see if that's why the baby's not getting any methylated folate. Where it directly relates to this podcast is that it's linked to babies being born with tongue tie. And we know that tongue tie can lead to difficulties breastfeeding. So there's a really, really simple solution. You don't have to go to a blood test. You don't have to make a doctor's appointment. You don't have to do any of that. Just make sure you're taking a supplement, whether you're taking prenatal vitamins or postnatal, you know, wherever you are in your life. Take a supplement that has methylated folate in it. So it's folate just like you see on most vitamin bottles, but then it'll say methylated in front of it, which just means they already did the work. So if your body doesn't know how to do the work, it's already been done and your body can just use it.
Okay. So it'll say that on the side of the vitamins?
Yeah. So instead
like
of
when you look at the ingredients.
Yeah. So it'll be
you
like,
can look for that.
Yeah, like B12, B6, and then sometimes it'll say folic acid, sometimes it'll say folate, sometimes it'll say methylated folate, and that's the one you want to buy.
Okay. All right. And that's all you have to do.
That's all you have to do. Super easy. And it's not going to hurt you if you don't have the gene mutation. It just makes it a little bit easier for your body to process it. So they're really good for everybody.
That's easy.
Yeah. And I like to tell people, because isn't it nice when something's easy?
Yeah. Yes. And when there's a rule across the board.
Yeah.
Because it's not like just do it sometimes, but not this time, and then only sometimes if this is happening, and it's like, what?
No.
So like if there's a blanket statement out there, like lube it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Methylated folate.
Yep.
Yeah. These are easy things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so so this is prenatally.
Yeah.
We're talking about prenatal period of time. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah. But you
not like
keep taking it. If you want to keep taking it, they make just regular methylated folate. You can buy it at the health food store. So if you find that you have low energy, I mean, if you're postnatal and you have some concerns, you can do a blood test, or when you're getting your physical, you know, ask them to check your folate levels. And if it's low, you can just take a methylated folate supplement. Know that if you like start taking it and then all of a sudden you're like, I feel kind of anxious, it just means the dose is too high and you just have to take a little bit less.
Okay.
Yeah. Because of course, you know, there's not a lot of specific regulation in vitamins. So you can go walk down the aisle and like, this one is, you know, 500 and this one is 1,000 and this one is 2,000. Right. And you're like, which one do I take? You just kind of have to experiment to know what's right for you.
And then you go to two different doctors will tell you two wildly different things.
Absolutely. I think I had a doctor once tell me, you know, you just take whatever dosage they sell at the store. And I was like, what?
They're all different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just follow what's on the bottle. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Because, you know, you're exactly the same as everybody else. And
everybody's, exactly.
The same weight and height and have the same diet.
So start low and then increase and back off if you need to.
Yeah. And so people who need it, like, you know, who have the gene mutation will notice when they start taking it, they'll feel less anxious. They'll get more energy. They'll sleep better. So that's a good way of being like, oh yeah, like sort of self-confirmation. This is the right path.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, this is such a wonderful conversation. I think you should come back and we should have more conversations about, I don't know what we can talk about. There was a whole bunch of different avenues that we stopped.
Things. Yeah. Maybe we can do a sound bath sometime. That might be fun.
Ooh, oh my God. We should do that. Like you could just do that like online, like into the microphone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're doing that.
I look forward to it. It's going to be awesome.
We have to do that. That'll be so awesome. And that would be something that people can replay over and over, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Like, maybe don't listen to it while you're driving.
Oh, okay. Don't do that. No, like operating heavy machinery or anything. Like maybe nursing your baby at night, or like if you're
nursing your baby, and babies love it too. I sometimes will work with pregnant individuals for sound baths, and it's like they can say, "Oh, the baby's really responding," or "The baby's really settling down." "Oh, the baby loves it," and that's always just so fun.
Oh, that is so cool. I was thinking about doing an episode. This is like totally off topic, but it reminds me of the same thing, of just me just sitting here being like, "You're amazing. It's okay. I know you're upset right now, or maybe you're tired," and just go on for like 10 minutes so that like, and just have this 10 minutes, like some, moms can just go into the room or the bathroom or whatever and just listen to it if they're having a bad day.
100% you should do that. That is such a good idea.
Yeah, I think I'll do that.
Yeah.
Well, again, it was so nice to hear from you, or nice to talk to you.
Yeah.
Tell us where people can find you. And
yeah, so my website is sound-birthing.com. You can find me on Instagram at Facebook at sound_birthing. And come look at my website. I've spent many, 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 many hours working on it. So I hope you like it, but I'd love feedback on it. I just redid the whole thing.
Oh God, websites.
Yeah. And I post, I post multiple times a week on Instagram, lots of videos, lots of facts and fun things. So I hope you can find me over there.
Yeah, and I'll put all of this stuff in the show notes too, so everybody can just scroll down and click on it and find you. And
super helpful.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here, and until next time.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Bye.